So, in my life, I've learned a lot of lessons, whether it's from a teacher or mentor, whether it's through trial and error, whether it's from simply failing miserably, falling flat on my face, having to get back up and keep going, or some combination therein. I've pretty much always wanted to learn them a little bit sooner, and I was feeling existential, wistful the other night. I scribbled 7 of them down here, and I'm going to share them with you. So whether you are a creative, a actor, voice actor, or audiobook narrator or not, I've found these things all very helpful in, of course, my creative life, in my professional life. Granted, for me, those are a little bit intertwined, and my personal life. So you'll probably find something here that you can take away and use if you don't already have it in your back pocket. I'm Jay. Welcome to my booth. These are the 7 lessons. I'm going to name them, then I'm going to talk about them in a bit more depth if you want to listen to me ramble. Lesson 1, more or harder work does not equal better work. Lesson 2, one step at a time. Lesson 3, perfect probably doesn't exist, and if it did, it's probably boring. Lesson 4, failures are opportunities. Lesson 5, celebrate your wins. 6, a few breaths, a walk, a run, getting outside for a second, stepping away can fix a lot. And finally, 7, just jump in before you think you're ready. So those are the 7 things. I'm going to talk about them one at a time now. I can't remember the order that I named them because I was jumping around, but I'll do my best. Lesson 1, more or harder work does not equal better work. So I learned this specifically in an acting context. So I'll talk sort of about how it applied there for me and then how it's branched out into other aspects of my life. In acting specifically, when I was a young actor or a younger actor, depending on how you think I'm doing relative to time and the inevitable decay, I felt, believed, and thought very, very strongly that effort correlated to value and impact in my performances. In other words, the more time I put in, the longer I spent on my lines, the more I labored over something, the more value and impact the audience would receive when watching my performance. Not true. Effort can help in some respects, but the performances that I've grown to appreciate as I've aged, as I've matured in acting and performance, and as I've learned a lot and observed and failed a ton, effortlessness is the thing to strive for. Effortlessness is one of the biggest keys to mastery, or one of the biggest indicators at the very least of mastery in really anything. If you watch people who are really, really good, expert, masterful at what they do it with an ease and effortlessness that is baffling and really, really striking to observe. And so my mistake in this was thinking that by virtue of putting effort in, more time, that would translate and be seen and, applauded. I would get accolades for, putting in a ton of work and beating myself up. It's just not true. It's not necessary. Effortlessness is much more valuable than effort. So that's in acting specifically, and sort of in a performance-specific mindset. You don't want to watch someone straining. You want to watch someone living easefully in a circumstance. But in professional circumstances as well, it can be really easy and dangerous to go down a sort of workaholic path where you start to think and believe the more time I put into this, the more value I will receive from that time. And there is a limit to which that can be true, but it becomes a slippery slope really, really quickly. To give you an example, in my MFA program, we were going constantly 12 to 14-hour days and 6 days a week. That's a lot. It's a lot. And you get value from that sort of exhaustive regimen. But having the time to rest, reflect, and take a break from stuff often for me leads to the biggest breakthroughs in really any endeavor. To talk about it mechanically with our bodies, when we sleep, literally, that's when our brains form memories and start to really translate stuff from short to long-term memory. That's a mechanism that happens. We need rest in order to learn stuff. And so more work does not necessarily equal better work. Let's move on to the second one. One step at a time. I really wish I had a novel, cooler, sexier way to say it, but it is a tried and true idiom for a reason. One step at a time. And there's a ton of them. Rome wasn't built in a day. Every journey begins with a single step. So pick your favorite and run with it. But the biggest thing that I take away from that phrase, there's sort of two parts to it. And both of them have to do with patience for me specifically, but maybe for you as well. For me, when acting and voice acting and audiobooks, it's very, very easy to slip into a comparative and competitive mindset by virtue of the industry. You see someone doing really great stuff and you think, why isn't that me right now? And you don't see the whole road behind them that led them to that point. And some people's roads are shorter than others on the way to success in acting and performance specifically. So one step at a time in that sense is focusing on yourself, focusing on putting one step in front of the other, and kind of on the things that you can control. I can do this today, one step at a time. In terms of voiceover in particular and professional stuff, and even like personal hobbies and things, I'll use voiceover as the example for this, but it applies more broadly. In voiceover, there are so many facets of owning and operating your own voiceover business by yourself. And I wasn't clear on any of this when I started, and that's the main reason that this channel exists, because I was blown away by the amount of stuff you're expected to know. And if you look at that mountain of stuff, audio engineering, marketing, learning how to do website, SEO, performance notes, how to do all of these things, where to look for jobs, it all mounts and mounts, and it can look like this huge mountain and shut you down, and it becomes overwhelming really, really quickly. But if you focus one step at a time, it becomes way more manageable, and before you know it, you look back and you're halfway up or at the top of the mountain. So focus on the things you control, focus on something that you can do objectively today, and make small goals to achieve the big ones in any respect, and it's really, really valuable. At least it has been for me. Celebrate your wins. This business in particular, but in life in general, we don't spend a lot of time celebrating ourselves and the things that we're proud of. And if you're like me, I am, even saying this feels gross to me, but I am humble to a fault. My humility is pathological in a lot of ways. I hate talking about myself. I hate being proud of things that I've done in a public sphere. It feels icky to me. And, you don't have to go on social media and blast your achievements every now and again, but taking the time for yourself in voiceover, in acting, this business is really tough, but in life in general, if you went for a run today, that can be a win for you that you celebrate. If you're working on, quitting smoking and you tapered back, that can be a win that you celebrate. If you book a huge voiceover job, of course, that can be a win. But the important thing is allowing yourself the time and space to say, yeah, I did it, and I'm proud of myself for doing this, and doing it earnestly, not just saying that for the sake of saying it, but really feeling proud of yourself because you deserve it. And you can scale it up and down, but don't discount the wins, even the small ones. Failures are opportunities. This kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of the stuff, but it's easy to get down on yourself. At least it is for me, and it's very easy to get down on yourself in this business. You can go a long time struggling to book something, especially when you're starting out, and it can be easy to start to beat yourself up, start into negative talk, but failures don't really exist. This whole video, sort of, the ethos of it is I learned a ton of stuff by failing, and I learned very quickly by virtue of that. The bigger the failure, the bigger the lesson. And treating things like that instead of, well, shucks, I suck, thinking of it as a springboard to move you forward, or a note to take that your body is giving yourself. Failures are opportunities for growth, and you should see them that way. Perfect is boring, and it doesn't exist. This is something that's hard to sort of synthesize into at least my body, but perfect, I am a perfectionist, and to use VoiceOver as a sort of example for this, when I was starting out, I would spend a long time on my auditions. I would work them over and over and over, listening, making small tweaks. But now, the first 3 takes that I do, I almost always are submitting from those 3 first takes. Because if I work for an hour and a half, if I'm really excited and passionate about, and I try to make the audition perfect, firstly, I'll listen after an hour and a half to that last take, and I've thought, yes, I've got it down perfect. Then I go back and listen to one of the first 3 takes. Chances are, 9 times out of 10, they sound very, very similar, if not exactly the same. And the big difference there is that the first 3 have a spontaneity and a humanity to them by virtue of the small imperfections. I haven't smoothed things out for hours trying to get the perfect audition when I already had the perfect and very human audition at the beginning. Another example that I think of often in this respect is a brand spanking new book versus a used book. Now, this may be just a me thing, but I like the image a lot. A new book, sure, it's crisp, clean, it has that new book smell. No one's touched this book yet. It's perfect. But by virtue of that, it doesn't have a richness or a history to it outside of itself. It's just that book, just that story. Whereas if we take that same book and it's a 50-year-old or more or less used book, the pages are crinkled, some are dog-eared, there might be notes inside, it's got kind of a musky smell, the cover has a worn edge to it, the binding might be somewhat falling apart and it's been taped, maybe there's even an inscription inside. All of those things lead to a wonderful and rich story that this book has had before. Who was the person that touched this? And it can go so deep in that just by virtue of it being a used book. And that's really exciting because it's imperfect. It's been through stuff. Anyway, that's just an image that I like a lot, so I thought I would share it in that respect. A few breaths, a simple walk, taking a run, getting outside, it can fix a lot. Now, this is something that's really boosted me up a ton. Working from home, working by yourself in this business can be tough, and it can be really hard to get into this tunnel vision. You start feeling locked into your... There are a lot of things. If you're upset, if you're frustrated, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling overwhelmed, confused, really any emotion that has any sort of weight in a negative way, going for a walk has always pretty much helped me to resolve or at least work through, step away from it, and heal for a moment. And it can't be understated. A walk, a few deep breaths, a run, getting outside does wonders. Try before you think you're ready. This is something that is really, really important in creative endeavors, I think. But it applies, of course, to everything. Try before you think you're ready. And there are a few reasons specifically for this. One, if you're anything like me, you're probably way better than you think you are. Imposter syndrome creeps in, comparisons where you see, I'm not there yet when you're looking at another person or someone in your sphere. And that sort of stuff, it's not helpful in any way, and it's probably not true. You're probably better than you think you are, and just by trying, you can prove to yourself and get an accurate reading of where you're actually at. And then as well, if you're trying, this kind of goes hand in hand with the perfect is boring thing. If you try to make sure that everything's all tied up neatly with a bow and you're impeachable, you're perfect, there's no way you can make a mistake. You're going to be working forever because you're never going to get there. So just try anyway. And you'll learn the things where you can grow much more quickly by virtue of trying. To use theater as an example, when I was working on plays and stuff, there would be often in almost every production I was in, often there would come a moment where we would be working on a scene and everybody would stop, gather around, and start sort of brainstorming how to solve this one very specific issue, whatever it may be. And we'd be sitting there talking about it for a while, and the minutes would tick by, rehearsal would come closer to ending, and we would sort of get stuck in these spots. When on the other hand, if we had just tried the scene a few different ways in a really, really messy fashion and not cared if it was stupid or it didn't work, if we just tried it, we would probably be able to vet all of the stuff we talked about and then more, and then get deeper to what would actually be compelling. And it would be better to just try it. So try before you think you're ready. It's not going to be as bad as you think it is. Anyway, those are some lessons that I find incredibly helpful in my day-to-day life, in my creative life, in my professional life. Let me know if you find them helpful and if you have any life lessons that you'd like to share, because I'm always down to learn. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. Until the next one of these, be well, and I'll see you there. Toodles.